Welcome in guys to Sports Bliss. In today's video, I'll be discussing my views on the top running backs in the league and the tiers I believe that they are categorized in. Starting with tier number 1, this tier is made up of McCaffrey, Elliott, Barkley, and Kamara. If you were given the 101 draft spot in your league, consider drafting any one of these players. These RBs are all coming off great years and have very high floors, which make them very valuable. Alright, so starting off with Saquon Barkley. He was running back 1 in 2018 fantasy. So entering this season, the Giants offense is missing Tate due to a 4-game suspension and Coleman due to a torn ACL. Shepard has been questionable with a broken thumb. Last year, without OBJ, Barkley remained consistent with his stats, so I don't think that this should be a problem. His targets remain the same while his yardage did increase, so overall I'm not too worried about Saquon's production, which is why he remains in the top tier. Next, we have Ezekiel Elliott. Last year, he led the league in rushing and also had 95 targets and 77 receptions on the year. We did see an increase in his stats after Amari Cooper came over from Oakland, so we may see the same thing again this year. Expect it to be a pass-heavy offense with Moore coming in as offensive coach. Depending on his receptions, it will determine where he lands among similar top running backs, and that's why I believe he's in the top tier, because I do believe that he's going to have around the same receptions he had last year. My predictions for Elliott this year, if he does however sign a contract anytime soon and does remain healthy, I believe that he hovers around 60 receptions this year and is a top 3 running back again. Next on the list, we have Christian McCaffrey. Last year, he saw a major uptake in touches and received more than 100 carries, more than his rookie year. He was on the field for 91% snaps last year, and he got 95% of running back touches. This is why he is so valuable. He had 4 games of 100 plus yards on the ground, 63% of 10 zone touches, and 57% goal line touches. I do not have many concerns with this man, but Cam Newton played last year with a shoulder injury. This year, how does it affect his receptions? Because he was throwing dump-off passes because his shoulder was bummed. I don't expect to really make a difference this year. I believe his floor is still very high again, and it's just a no-brainer. He's top pick. Alvin Kamara. So Alvin Kamara is on a great offense led by Drew Brees, one of the greatest QBs of all time. Last year he had 80 receptions in both seasons. I expect him to have the same role with Ingram out and Murray in as their new RB2. He's not a workhorse running back, so don't expect him to get more than 20 carries a game. The only concern I would have with him is his work split. Like I said, not a workhorse running back. We've seen 2-year sample size. I'm not concerned. We know that great athlete that Kamara is, and he's in a great offense with a decent offensive line, so expect him to be a top-tier running back again this season. Tier 2, we have Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, and James Conner. Alright, so Chubb was one of the best running backs last year. He was a workhorse running back, 18 carries a game. He became the number 1 guy for the Browns after Carlos Hyde got traded. He's the highest elusive grade in most yards after contact. So we've seen his breakaway ability last year, and that is very valuable among running backs. I believe that he will be the number 1 guy for the Browns again this year after Hunt serves his 10-game suspension, and he will get more of the snaps now and receptions because of Duke Johnson being traded, so that's a big plus as well. My predictions for Chubb, I believe that he's going to be a top 5 running back this year. 40 receptions. As the number 1 guy on a skillful offense this year, we can finally say that for the Browns, he will remain in the elite tier category. Next up is Dalvin Cook. He received 60% of snaps when on the field last year. We know his floor is unpredictable, but he has a very high upside. Last year's early pass-heavy offense with a second-half collapse can show why Dalvin Cook is a very valuable asset. We know the Vikings love to run the ball. So if they do have a healthy Dalvin Cook, expect him to do just that. They also have slight improvements to their offensive line and already top 5 offense. They have no Latavius Murray this year, so I expect him to have another 40 receptions in 2018. If he's healthy, expect the same role. There are concerns regarding injury history, hamstrings. I don't know how that will affect this season, but I can tell you I don't predict that it will hurt him this season. I think he remains healthy and has a great year under the Vikings offense. Todd Gurley has been the best running back in fantasy for the past 2 years. He's also a part of a great offense that has the same assets returning, which means there's not any confusion and they're all, used to playing together. We have seen that he's a workhorse running back with a very high floor. He gets a lot of goal line touches, which is very valuable, in fantasy. Get that 6 points. He had 6 games with 100 plus yards and 1 game with over 200 yards. There are many concerns, including a major concern with his arthritic knees. He's always had these knee injuries. We know that a lot of guys are getting arthroscopic knee surgery. I didn't know what that was until I searched it up the other day. Some players, they cut an incision in their knee and they go in with a microscope and they look around. But some players like Stoney Michel and Todd Gurley, they're taking out their meniscus maybe every few months or every month. They're taking out their meniscus. And with Todd Gurley, before they knew that the meniscus was so valuable, they took out Todd Gurley's meniscus to a full. So now he's having problems with his knee. So that is a major concern. And there's questions, will he continue to have a workhorse type role with, him being behind star running backs and Henderson? I think he will, but I think Henderson will get some of his snaps, maybe even goal line snaps, which may be a problem. So I'd be a little worried about drafting Todd Gurley this year, but I wouldn't be too worried if you do get him. Last year as a rookie, James Conner had a monster season. With 35% of targets now available with Brown and James gone, I expect James Conner to be involved with the passing game as well as Jalen Samuels. We know Tomlin has always used a workhorse running back, so I expect James Conner to be the number 1 guy again and to have the role that he had last year. Can James Conner go the whole season as a workhorse running back? We don't know that because we saw only a small sample size with the 1 season. He did get injured. He didn't last the whole season, and his production did slow towards the end, which is, that's a concern to many people. But I believe that he'll come back stronger than he did last year because he's prepared and he knows what to expect. Some concerns. The Steelers hired new coach personnel who coached Jalen Samuels in college, and he knows how good of, a pass catching back he can be. So we're not, people aren't really sure what to expect out of the role Jalen Samuels will have this year. I believe will be a running back by committee. I think James Conner is the man, and he gets most of the snaps and receptions on this offense again this year. Melvin Gordon is in a great offense led by Phillip Rivers, who we know is in the final years of his contract trying to get that Super Bowl ring. This offense has been run around Gordon ever since he was the number 1 guy. Only Barkley and Gurley average more fantasy points a game among running backs, so we know he is very efficient game to game. There are concerns with him holding out. We don't know how long he's going to hold out for, but when he does pick up that money in that new contract, expect him to be another great running back option this year. There are worries about good featured backs behind him and Jackson and Eckler, but as we've seen as last season, Melvin Gordon was the number 1 guy with those running backs behind him as well. So I expect him to do the same again this season as he did last season. To start off with Kerryon Johnson. Recently, Theo Riddick was cut from the Lions, which is a huge deal for Kerryon Johnson. He will now replace Riddick's targets on the field. The Lions recently acquired new head offensive coach Darrell Bevell. He loves to run the ball, as we know from Seattle when he was the coach there. We now have a healthy Stafford who played last year with back fractures, which is a part of the reason why the offense was so terrible. And we know the offense can't get worse than it was last year, so expect their star players to shine a little bit more than they did last year. Some predictions I have: he will get 50 receptions with 200 plus carries if he remains healthy. Some concerns are he will face a tough Vikings and Jaguars defense, among with others. So it's his second year. He didn't play too much last year. We worry about, if he's talented enough to face these defenses, but I believe with a new offensive coach who knows how to run the ball, I believe that they'll be just fine. Marlon Mack is a workhorse type running back on a top 5 scoring offense with a great offensive line. We worry about Andrew Luck's calf. I don't think he'll have the same production if Andrew Luck is injured for some of the season. We hope that Andrew Luck's calf, injury is okay, but I don't think it takes much away from Marlon Mack. He was a goal line threat last year with 10 touchdowns in 12 games, which is a ridiculous stat. The Colts have 23% targets to make up for. He averaged 17 carries per game and 80 yards when he came back from injury. Another concern is that the lack of involvement in the passing game. He had Hines behind him. Hines had the 10th most targets for a rookie running back in the NFL history with 81 targets. I do not expect him to have another season like that. The stats, the odds against that is, very slim. He'll face tough teams his first few games, so expect his production to pick up a little bit after those games. But I do think he'll still be a very good running back to have on your fantasy team within those first few games. We know he missed a good amount of the season last year. I don't think injury is a big concern this year. That's why I would pick him up if you can on your fantasy team this year. Damien Williams is on a team with a top 3 offense run by Andy Reid, who uses his running backs to full potential. This year in the offseason, he was assigned the lead role in the running game by Chiefs offensive coordinator. We have seen a small but good sample size from last year after Kareem Hunt was suspended. Some concerns with Damien Williams are that his constant hamstring issues are going to be a problem. I believe that he rushed back, to practice after we heard Andrew Reid speak about how he was very angry that he missed, 10 days of practice. I believe that he's still injured. He's not 100%. Hyde has been getting reps when he has not been there, and they've said Hyde's been looking good and capitalizing while he's been gone. Is he capable of being the number 1 guy? Damien Williams? We really don't know. We've only seen a little bit, but there's some worry about him. If he remains healthy, he is going to be the number 1 guy for the Chiefs, and I believe that he's going to be a great option to have as running back 2 on your fantasy team this year. Last but not least, we have Aaron Jones. There was news that LaFleur wants to get running backs more involved in the passing game, which is a major plus because we've seen what Aaron Jones can do as of last year. He's a Kamara-type running back, less volume than a workhorse, but he's still very efficient with rushing and receptions. He led NFL in yards per carry last year, and he was a part of a very high-powered offense with a great offensive line, and he's under Aaron Rodgers as a QB. Some concerns: he's dealing with a hamstring injury. It's very close to, it's preseason. It's very close to the NFL actually starting. So how is his hamstring? We don't know. But if he is healthy, expect him to have another season like he did last year. I believe that he's going to be another great RB2 to have on your team.